Hello and good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Hafiz Marzukhi. Two Navy helicopters collided in mid-air during training in Lumut, Perak, killing all 10 crew on board. The military helicopters collided during the Royal Malaysian Navy, or TLDM, rehearsal for its 90th anniversary celebration scheduled in May. According to a statement from the Navy, the incident happened at 9:32 a.m. during a flyover exercise near TLDM's Lumut Naval Base. It added that it would form a committee to investigate the cause of the incident. Perak Police said all 10 bodies had been retrieved and are now in Hospital Raja Permaisuri Bainun in Ipoh. A video of the incident showed one of the helicopters clipping the rotor of the other aircraft before the two crashed into the ground. The 90th anniversary of the Royal Malaysian Navy, scheduled to begin this Friday, will be cancelled following the helicopter crash. Defence Minister Datuk Seri Khalid Nordin said a doa selamat and tahlil will be organised instead for the victims of the tragic incident. He also assured that the government will guarantee assistance to the families of the victims after meeting them. Child abuse cases must be reported to the authorities instead of being uploaded on social media. Women, Family and Community Development Minister Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri says at times when such information is uploaded on social media, authorities would not get the details regarding the alleged abuse.
She said Malaysians can do so by contacting the Talian Kasih line at 15999 or sending the relevant information to the 01926159999 WhatsApp number, which operates 24 hours a day. The number of cases of children seeking protection or being involved in abuse or neglect cases have been increasing. In 2022, there were 6,770 cases, followed by 7,520 last year. Nancy said there are welfare department officers stationed at every district who are able to respond quickly to any complaint.
Some 4,500 film industry practitioners are set to get Social Security coverage following a Memorandum of Understanding signed between the Social Security Organisation, or SOCSO, and the National Film Development Corporation Malaysia, or FINAS. Human Resources Minister Stephen Sim says the government will bear 90% of each recipient's SOCSO contributions and FINAS will pay the remaining 10%.
Under the MOU, he said this would bring the coverage amount to a total of 104,850 ringgit or 232 ringgit 80 cents for each recipient a year. Stephen added that following this, any companies looking to renew their filming license with FINAS must also make SOCSO contributions for crew members. Meanwhile, Communications Minister Fahmi Fadzil said a standard contract requiring SOCSO contributions from film cast and crew is in the pipeline. The standard contract, he said, would be announced sometime in the middle of the year.
Malaysia's single window for the startup ecosystem, or My Startup, was launched earlier today at the KL20 Summit 2024 by Science, Technology and Innovation Minister Chang Lee Kang. Powered by artificial intelligence, it will function as a one-stop online platform to ensure seamless business environment for all things related to startups in Malaysia.
In line with the nation's aim to be among the top 20 global startup ecosystem by 2030, My Startup will facilitate seamless business environment by uniting founders, investors, tech talents, government agencies, and ecosystem players for an inclusive and sustainable growth.
My Startup will boast a wide range of features and services for startups to access resources, mentorship, funding and regulatory support. Lee Kang said My Startup, which is powered by Cradle Fund, comes equipped with AI, which is able to answer queries and provide insights about starting a business in Malaysia directly to its users. The platform is a part of the government's initiatives to make Malaysia a top 20 global startup ecosystem by 2030, targeting 5,000 competitive startups by 2025.
We'll go for a short break. Stay with us.
Dua London Derby berturut-turut. Inilah ujian untuk Arsenal mengejar gelaran.
All that matters is who wins it.
Pertembungan penentuan bakal juara Liga.
Oh, wow. That is incredible.
Tekanan semakin memuncak.
That is one belter of a derby goal.
Arsenal bertemu musuh tradisi sekali lagi di Premier League secara langsung di Astro.
Welcome back. Now to international news. Taiwan's eastern county of Hualien was shaken by dozens of earthquake aftershocks from late Monday till early Tuesday morning. The aftershocks caused minor damages with no casualties reported.
The Central Weather Administration said the strongest aftershock was a 6.3 magnitude tremor in eastern Hualien. On April 3rd, the largely rural and sparsely populated Hualien was hit by a 7.2 magnitude earthquake that killed at least 17 people. There have been more than 1,000 aftershocks since then. The Hualien Fire Department said that 2 buildings already uninhabited after being damaged in the first earthquake had suffered further damage and were leaning. Following the aftershocks, the government suspended work and school on Tuesday, while some roads were closed due to rockfalls.
Protests against Israel's assault on Gaza have spread from Columbia and Yale to other campuses across the US as officials scramble to defuse a growing protest movement. On Monday night, police arrested dozens of people at a pro-Palestinian demonstration at New York University in Manhattan.
Dozens of students were arrested at Yale earlier in the day while Columbia cancelled in-person classes. Similar encampments have sprung at Berkeley, MIT and other universities across the country. The protests have seen pro-Palestinian students demanding that their schools condemn Israel's genocide in Gaza and divest from companies that sell weapons to Israel. Meanwhile, some Jewish students say much of the criticism of Israel has turned into anti-Semitism. Protests have erupted at top universities across the US in response to the escalation of the Israel-Hamas conflict since October 7th.
A week-long heat wave continues to sweep over Bangladesh with temperatures rising up to 43 degrees Celsius. At least 4 people have reportedly died due to the heat-related illnesses. The Bangladesh Meteorological Department has already extended the heat alert for 3 days from Monday as the extreme weather condition is expected to persist. Authorities have temporarily shut schools for the week and asked people to stay out of the sun. The government has directed all hospitals to stay prepared as heat strokes and dehydration may go rampant in the South Asian nation due to the heat wave. A report by the Energy Industries Council, or EIC, reveals a widening gap between the industry's current reality and the ambitious net zero targets set by policymakers to be achieved by 2050. CEO Stuart Broadley outlines the challenges facing the industry and what needed to be delivered on its net zero commitments.
Findings are quite revealing, actually, and probably the headline finding is that nearly 90% of those we interviewed just no longer believe at least the interim net zero targets, which for some countries are 2030, some are 2035, are achievable. The main reasons for that are, when you're in the energy supply chain, wherever you are, whether you're one of the larger manufacturers or one of the larger service companies, or further down, perhaps one of the innovators, anywhere in the world, it's ultimately about, are you seeing orders coming into your business that are related to net zero? So that would be offshore wind or onshore wind or solar, or it might be hydrogen or carbon capture. And vast majority of companies are seeing so little of that business coming into their order intake, much less than they had planned for and what they had understood was required to meet their country's net zero targets, that they've concluded that there are clearly delays in the cascading of ambition into the reality of country-specific and indeed global net zero policies.
Stuart also highlighted the lack of funding for certain sectors of the global energy industry as an obstacle to progress.
We see new nuclear, which has nearly 50% FID rates globally now. Of all the projects announced, 50% are funded. Why? Because more countries now regard new nuclear, large nuclear projects as complying with and supporting their net zero strategies. Oil and gas arguably does not, although the oil and gas industry is working hard, of course, to go on its own decarbonisation journey. So you then look at the technologies which are classically renewable and drive directly towards net zero. And if, for instance, you look at offshore wind, less than 6% of the world's offshore wind projects that are currently announced out there, and they're announced because countries require offshore wind, in many cases, to be critical to achieving net zero. Less than 6% are funded. I mean, that clearly is a pretty damning, outcome from what is seen globally as one of the easier technologies to apply to achieve net zero. Then you carry on into some of the harder to abate, sort of sectors of industry, such as the need to have hydrogen to replace gas, or the need to store, to capture and store CO2. Both of those sectors are, around the 3% funded rate, FID rate. So, if you like, in simple terms, the vast majority of projects announced are not yet funded, and therefore, from a supply chain point of view, are not real.
Achieving their net zero targets cannot be accomplished by any single country alone, says Stewart. He underscores the importance of learning from other nations and strengthening trade relationships to facilitate the journey to net zero.
I don't think it's easier to say that you look at one country, like the UK, which has undoubtedly seen success over the last 30, 40 years on its journey to net zero, and it's achieved a certain degree of definite progress towards that, although more to do. And I don't think it's easy for then another country to say, well, they've done it and we've not, somehow are we behind? Because each country has its own unique journey. So does a country have, as much offshore wind resource as the UK? Not every country does. And I don't believe, for instance, Malaysia does. So different technologies are required, different natural resources are available to you. I think the other thing that I would say is a lesson learned is no one country can achieve net zero on their own. You have to have a very collaborative, trade-based and technology-sharing approach to achieving net zero. Learn the lessons from other countries and how they've done it, but also then be happy to say, for my country, this is the solution that's right for us based upon our unique situation and our unique natural resources, but then collaborate and trade as much as you can to facilitate that journey. And I think countries any country that tries to do it too much on its own, it's definitely much harder, it's more expensive. Access to natural, to the resources and the supply chain you need will get harder. So I think those are probably helpful lessons for any country struggling a bit, or perhaps not struggling, but still in that process of working out the key roadmap to achieve net zero.
And that wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Hafiz Marzukhi. Thanks for watching and good night.